Jaguar fans, you're doing a lot of draft prep, and I know you're working hard at it. But I think sometimes what we do is we look at the free agency signings the wrong way. We're going to bust some myths here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast that hopefully you can find wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching or listening, make sure wherever you do that, tap in each and every day so you do not miss an episode of the show that is brought to you today and sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, everydayer, shout out to you. And if you're not an everydayer, shout out to you too. Hopefully you will become one by coming back every single day. Now, look, here's what we're going to do today. First pick for first timers. I don't think people realize that's where we're going to end up. I don't think people realize how important this pick is for first-time head coach Liam Cohen, first-time general manager James Gladstone, and first-time senior executive vice president Tony Baselli. It is extremely important. This is going to be the player that puts an imprint. And you would think Tony would know about that because he at one point was the first player ever drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll discuss that. I think they're set up nicely for the draft. They got rid of a whole bunch of needs. And what I mean by needs is, could they line up today and play with what they have? Yes, they can. But they're still deficient in some areas. James Gladstone has discussed that he left some room during free agency, even though they made 10 additions, that he left room to onboard those 10 draft picks that he's talking about. So that tells me that he kind of knows the area, the zones where these players will fall. So we'll give you that. I'm going to bust some myths about the free agents that were signed. There are people that I had to block because they told me that the Jaguars didn't do enough. That ain't what got them blocked. What got them blocked is that, and you're sitting there co-signing this. Look at you looking all pitiful. This is shame and all of this. You're sitting there co-signing this. And I actually like the person that did it, that said it. The only thing I hate is when people tell me what my why is. And one thing I'll never do is sell my soul in order to sell you something that I know is bogus. And I will never, ever do that. And I won't ever become what I despise and sell you wolf tickets. So what I tell you is, and what I'm telling you is, this is my honest opinion. It doesn't mean it's right or correct, but it's how I feel about what the Jaguars have done. So with that being said, I'm going to go through some of these free agents and probably go through all of them and let you know exactly how I feel about them. And let us start right at the top. I have told people that Diami Brown was a dude that we saw ascending using his speed in the playoffs. He had the second most receiving yards in the playoffs. And one of those games was against Tampa where Liam Cohen watched it. And also Diami Brown was someone, and this is documented, that Les Snead hit James Gladstone up. And after he signed him and texted him, goes, basically something like, I knew you would, or whatever. And Gladstone basically said he loved Diami Brown when he was coming out. And I'm sure Les Snead got a mouthful of that when Gladstone was working for the Rams 4 years ago, and he was standing on the table for the dude, and they didn't get him. So James Gladstone said, okay, now I'm in charge. We're going to take Diami Brown. And it comes at a time when he's playing the absolute best football of his career. He's going to add speed and the ability to run after the catch and to take the top off the defense. As if some people think that, okay, you get Brian Thomas Jr., okay, you got your fast guy. Oh, no. The Jaguars said, no, we got a whole bunch of fast guys, and I wouldn't be surprised if they even made some more additions to that. But it did take away the pressing need, if you will, for a solid number two that could draw attention away from Brian Thomas Jr. Chuma Idoga, and I'm glad I'm looking at a list because I have forgotten people's names and screwed people's names up. Chuma Idoga went to University of Southern California. Guess who else went to University of Southern California? Tony Baselli. And this guy played for the Dallas Cowboys. It's hard to get on the field, but he did start 23 of 48 NFL games. That's a lot of experience, right? So now you add him to the back end or let's say the second 5, maybe number 6, and you're making big time competition for Anton Harrison. This is like one of the best swing linemen that the Jaguars have had. This is one of the best reserves they've had in years. Somebody with that type of experience. All right, we're going to keep going. Robert Hainsey. This is where I want to park it for a minute. Everybody assumes that Robert Hainsey just got demoted because it wasn't good enough. That's a myth. This is the main myth that I want to discuss. The reason why I say that is because, well, you guys had a dude that had a front row seat. That was Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator in Tampa. I don't think Liam Cohen probably made the decision. I think the decision was made with somebody a little bit higher pay grade in Tampa. They had drafted Graham Barton to be a center because they probably saw, as like an example, I'll tell you, they probably saw they wasn't going to be able to re-sign Robert Hainsey the following year. So they just said, you know what? If he's ready now, we'll go ahead and play him. Graham Barton took his lumps. Robert Hainsey was there just in case, he didn't take to the NFL well. He did. I wouldn't be surprised by the end of this year, Graham Barton is one of the 5 or 6 best centers in the league. And if Hainsey is just right behind him and you can get a guy that's one of the best 10, 12 centers in the league, I think that's why they picked him, because I think the scenario went down just like I thought, and he wasn't a guy that just got, quote unquote, beat out. In fact, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler said he thought the Jaguars paid too much for him, but I don't think so. I'll go with the side of the dude that was on the staff at Tampa, who knows exactly what he can do and how he can get it done. That was the biggest myth buster, by the way, that we just got some secondhand center who was a backup just because of familiarity. I don't believe that's the case. I think he's actually an upgrade. Jordan Lewis, this is the big one. This is the big one. Now, Jordan's 29 years old, be 30 years old this season, and that has some significance. So I will put him and Eric Murray in the same category here. Both, Eric Murray's 31, but they're both playing the best football of their life right now. They're both super, super active. If you can look at game tape or highlight tapes. They were integral parts of their teams playing well when they played and when they made the playoffs. Dallas over the last few years, maybe not last year, but certainly the Texans the last 2 years. That's an injection of toughness and activity. One at corner, one at safety. They're handsy. They have a tendency to be around the ball. That to me is a gift to whoever the defensive backs coach was going to be, and to Anthony Campanile, the defensive coordinator, because you got 2 guys that are ready to play. They already got enough young guys. They got Savage and Campbell. They're on this. They just started their second contracts, of course. Then the 2 rookies, Prince, of course, along with Jarian Jones. So this makes the room look a little bit different, and this makes them very, very competitive right now without thinking about the future, because over the next 2 years, these guys will still be playing at a super high level. That's another myth that got debunked. They got better at backup quarterback. Nick Mullins knows the offense. He's a little dude. He's 6 feet, 210 pounds, but he knows everything that the offense coordinator wants to do. Therefore, he can be Trevor's buddy in a whole bunch of ways. Hunter Long, the tight end, along with Munt, the tight end that they got from Johnny Munt, that they got from Minnesota. This is going to be in their 2 tight end packages, and they're pure tight ends. There ain't no move tight end. Both of these guys can block. Both of these guys can catch. They're rangy, 6'4", 6'5". I love it. All right, Patrick McCarry. Folks like to focus just on his versatility. I like to focus on the fact of the leverage that he uses when he plays. He has very, very quick feet. They're going to do a lot of pulling. They're going to get the ball to a lot of people out on the flanks, and these linemen are going to be in space a lot. McCarry is very, very good at creating that space with his foot quickness, getting to that second level, and then being able to turn and use leverage where he makes up for a little bit of lack of size at 6'4", 305. He uses leverage. So not only the versatility, but the technical ability of Patrick McCarry, in my opinion, makes that a very, very good pick. All right, so Cole Van Lannon, they brought him back. Cole Van Lannon got a tender offer at the very least. Released, of course, is Ronald Darby and all of those guys. Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk was traded. So the main thing is we'll see if they actually do bring Van Lanen back. I think Van Lanen was visiting a team out west, Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. But there you go. These are the guys that the Jaguars have added this year. What this has done, though, is injected depth with experience with guys that can functionally help the Jaguars do all of the things that they need to do to be able to play tomorrow. Now, so what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll tell you why I believe this sets them up very, very nicely for the draft to be able to take best available player, not just at pick 5, but all throughout the draft, because they don't have any like glaring holes on the team. We'll talk about that more here on Locked On Jaguars. As told you at the top of the show, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team and feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Now, mandatory that you pay attention to this. Game Time Picks is a curation process that makes it easier to find a better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Everyone doesn't have that, man. The curation makes the process so much easier and actually makes you want to come back for more. Now, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're running it down here on Locked On Jaguars. Thank you again for joining us here, spending your 28 to 30 minutes of time, your valuable time here listening to this podcast. It is very much appreciated, and I am grateful that you spend time with us here every day on Locked On Jaguars, the everydayers. All right, setting up nicely for the draft. The Jaguars can kind of sit in the catbird seat a little bit at number 5. As a team, they deserve to be picking 5th because they were just that bad, but it was coaching, it was the personnel department. As we stand today, I don't think they're the 5th worst team in the league. With the addition of the staff, with the new direction, with the enthusiasm, and with the players that they've added post-free agency, I just don't believe it. I think this is gold for them to be picking. They're not currently the 5th worst team in the league as they're constructed. I don't believe that. Trevor Lawrence is healthy. You have people that understand that he needs to be protected, and they've added depth along the offensive line. I forgot to mention Fred Johnson because I don't think the list was updated that I used. They also added Fred Johnson, who was the swing offensive lineman in Philly. He was the 7th guy in Philly. He's 6'7", about 330. That just goes to show you they injected a dude that can push the starters, that can start for you in a pinch, that can maul people to go along with everybody else. So kudos to them for that too. That is also a big signing. And that is why when people say, yeah, man, are they going to get another offensive lineman? Well, they got 2 starters, and then they got 2 other guys that can push because Fred Johnson can play tackle and guard, right? McCarry can play all up and down the line of scrimmage. You know, Anton Harrison twists his ankle, and they don't want to go. The kid they got from Dallas, which they probably would do. That's why I don't think they're going to take an offensive lineman first. And if they did, it would have to just be lights out. They got to be in love with somebody like Armand Mimbu. They got to just think that the kid's going to be lights out, all pro, and then they go ahead and take him. There's a chance, though, they could get Abdul Carter. And I know a lot of people think I'm crazy about that. There's also a chance they could get Travis Hunter, although I think there's no way the best player in the draft lasts until pick number 5. But if they get Abdul Carter, there's been a lot of stuff saying like, okay, how will they use him? So I'm going to period. I got 3 clips from the show that I did on Locked On NFL with Coach Keith Sanchez, and Keith knows what he's talking about. Keith was on staff at LSU for like 6 years, where he was like one of the directors of player personnel. He understands talent. He knows what it looks like. He coached a bunch of guys. He was there on staff in 2019 when those guys went and won the national championship. So I'm telling you, he knows what he's talking about when it comes to. So I'll play part one of the clip where he talks about Abdul Carter, and I'll tell you why sitting at 5, something might fall right into the Jaguars' lap. I'm going to tell you something. I learned something from you. We were on the squad show one night, and you talked about Abdul Carter, who I'm going to get to. And you mentioned the term stacked linebacker. I knew what it meant, but I had to really go and look at it, right? And really read up on it. I'm going to ask you this for a reason. I'm going to set this premise with you. Everybody, I don't know where all these Trayvon rumors coming from, but everybody wants to trade for Trayvon, and they're talking about we'll give you a day 3 pick. They don't watch real football. And I ain't just talking about the 20 and a half sacks the last 2 years. I'm talking about the game-wrecking ability. How many running backs, every time he tackles a running back, they go to the sideline holding their ribs or something because he's very, very physical.
And he's listed in the bucket as edge rusher, right? And I'm assuming that's why the Jaguar fans or fans, period, feel like, hey, let's, if we draft him, we have to kick Trayvon inside. Well, that's not true. Because first of all, there's
the reason why we can even have that discussion at this point is because I think the Jaguars can line up and play right now. At pick 5, they have 2 options. They can take what falls to them, or they can evaluate these guys and go, oh, man, we can move back if somebody wants to come up for one of these great players, because there's thought that the 2 quarterbacks will go 1 and 2. And then that leaves Abdul Carter and it leaves Travis Hunter. And then we're going to get to Mason Graham too. But whoever is left there at pick number 5, it gives them. That's why I hope everybody hopes that the Patriots take an offensive lineman to protect Drake May, because that would leave one of those 2 guys. And you got to take both of them or use both of them as trade bait for somebody who wants to come up and take a guy like that. And then you better tax them big, and then just go crazy in the draft. So I'm going to let you hear another clip about Abdul Carter and what his ability is and what I mean by just taking the best player available and figuring it out. There's a way, though, you could get Abdul Carter. You ain't got to move nobody. Tell me how you're going to do it and what you think of him as a prospect.
Yeah, so let's talk about this, man. Abdul Carter, and he's listed in the bucket as edge rusher, right? And I'm assuming that's why the Jaguar fans or fans, period, feel like, hey, let's, if we draft him, we have to kick Trayvon inside. Well, that's not true, because first of all, there's 3 downs to football, and there's various different situations, right? And Abdul Carter as a prospect, I'll start with him. I'll say this, that there's a comp to Micah Parsons, but as a stack backer, meaning an off-ball backer, right, not on the line of scrimmage, he's better than Micah Parsons.
Oh, that's what I was waiting for. That's it right there. Say it again.
He is better than Micah Parsons as a stack linebacker. He's more instinctive. He understands the run more. He understands run fits. And so he'll be able to play for you on 1st and 2nd down. But like we said, there's various situations. So if you get a 2nd and long and you think it's a pass, you can always walk him up, mug him up in the A gap. You can walk him up to the B gap. Or how about you put them on opposite sides or line them up next to each other on 3rd and 2nd downs and longs when it's obvious passing situation.
I don't think y'all know how happy I am when I hear stuff like that, because this is what good teams do. They just stack those dogs up, man, and then they send them out there and tell them to go play. Now, they have to be able to function in base, right? So everybody assumes that when I do stuff like that, it's okay, man, but you still ain't helping them stop the run. All right, so look, we ain't going to be able to cure everything with one thing. Every time I bring up something, I want y'all to focus on what they're getting, not what they're not getting. Because if we do that, you'll be able to do that for every player. If I say Mason Graham, then you'll say, yeah, but they still need a 3rd edge rusher, right? If I say Ted McMillan, you'll say, yeah, but they might still need another offensive lineman. Or they need another corner, or they need another safety. So some of this stuff, you can't satisfy everybody. But I keep telling people the draft does not end in the 1st round with that 1st pick. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. We'll get to segment 3 and why I think this draft pick may be the most important one in the history of this team, other than the 1st one with Tony Baselli. And that really did. That set the Jaguars up really, really nicely. Until Tony unfortunately had his injuries, but they were one of the best teams in the league within like 2 or 3 years when they had him and Jimmy and Fred and Keenan and Mark and Tony Brackens. This team was really, really good. See, when I can just name all of those dudes from 25 years ago and everybody just starts like thinking of the glory days, Maybe you can get back to that. We'll talk about first-timers doing first-time things here and why I think it's so important. We'll do it in segment 3 here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, so I gave you an example. We're talking about Abdul Carter. We'll talk about him a little bit, and then we'll get into why I believe the Jaguars, if they stay, if one of those great players are on the board, they're going to just take him because they are set up right now to not even worry about need. They can truly take best player available, but it's also the best player to pick for the first-time head coach, first-time EVP, first-time general manager. And I think that means something because it's their first swing into making this thing their own. Regardless if it's at a more of a position of need or not, I think what's going to help them go further is just picking the great player. Here's Keith Sanchez with more on Abdul Carter.
Because Abdul Carter, in my opinion, I believe he's that versatile.
I think he is too. And I saw a tape. There's a kid named Luke Altmaier that plays at Illinois. Luke Altmaier is probably dreaming right now. Every time he wakes up in the middle of the night in the cold sweat, he see Abdul Carter because Carter was rushing him. He was playing off the ball. I saw a play. I can't remember who it was against, but he lined up at Mike. He was in the A gap. He took a step back, watched for the screen, saw the screen, and took a beeline horizontally down the line and right at the first down marker made. And I'm like, that dude is what everybody has been telling me that the Jaguars should have been doing with Devin Lloyd. He's also what everybody keeps describing to me as what Jalen Walker is going to be. Now, the point that I just made there is the one I want to stick to. Because for 3 years, I have heard nothing but Jaguar fans telling me, why don't they use Devin Lloyd as more of a rusher? All right, so if I tell you that they're going to take a player who's the best pass rusher in the draft, or one of the one of the 3 best pass rushers in the draft. Twitchy, but he's also good enough to play stack linebacker or Sam linebacker or the second linebacker in a 4-2-5, and he's actually better at that than Devin Lloyd. What's the problem? Well, you don't take a stack linebacker at number 5. We just keep, I don't know how many times I got to say it. Micah Parsons, since he's been in the league, has led the league in pressures. Micah Parsons is like one of the 2 or 3 best pass rushers in the National Football League. And on first and second down, he's a stack linebacker. And this kid is probably better at that than him. This is the kind of luxury that the Jaguars have been provided because of what they've done in free agency. So all of those things that everybody sits there and go, oh, man, that ain't that good a move. These guys are bums and these guys are second-tier players. What the Jaguars did was they went quantity over quality. Now in the draft, they're going to go quality over quality over quantity. They went with guys that they believed they could win with, injected leadership on a very, very young team, young guys that still really don't know how to win. They went with leadership. They went with technicians. They went with guys that everyone, if you look at the old depth chart versus where these guys fit on the new depth chart, they're better. Wherever you slot them, they're better. There wasn't anybody competing with Walker Little and Anton Harrison or Ezra Cleveland at the end of last season for their spots. They got competition now, though, and don't be surprised if they had another offensive lineman. If they get in that second round and somebody's sitting there looking at them, they might go ahead and snatch somebody else up too. Could be Tyler Booker, could be Donovan Jackson or anybody like that. Maybe even Gray Zabel. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think he'll be long gone. But you get my point. They could also come back and instead of taking Mason Graham, move back up. They could take his teammate at Michigan, Grant, if he's not gone, but the Pittsburgh Steelers fans have told me that he's going to be gone by the time the Steelers pick. But there are other guys. Jamari Caldwell is a very good player out of Oregon. He's a run-stuffing fool and probably a better scheme fit right now than Mason Graham. So the thing is, man, is the Jaguars, while most people didn't like a lot of their free agency choices and they thought it was mid, you got to see the bigger picture. You can't just chase big names, big salaries. You can do it that way, but you got to build this team, man, to the point where every position matters, not just the first 10, not just the first 5 or the first 15, or even the starting 22. you have to be good throughout your roster because you're going to use all of those guys at some point during the season. When they were doing that rotation last year, we all got angry, not only because they were rotating too much, but because they were rotating guys in who weren't even near, not even a fraction as good as the other guys, and they were taking those guys out of the game when those guys weren't even tired. Now, I think the advantage is when they bring guys in now, these guys will functionally understand what they're supposed to do. There'll be better coaching, and then they were brought in here for specific reasons, like James Gladstone said, to be nothing more than who they are. That's why I believe this is going to be good. And don't take this for granted. The fact that this is the first draft for first-timers at their specific positions at vice president, head coach, and GM, they want to make this one count. He's going to be a high-character player. He's going to be somebody that's the best at his position. He's going to be versatile. He's going to be somebody that absolutely loves football. He's going to be somebody that by the end of the 2025 season, you all are going to be happy to have him on the roster. Remember, the draft does not end on day one. None of this stuff ends, man. Locked On NFL. You want to learn more about prospects? I mean, I'm not just talking about first rounders. I'm talking about second, third. The dude you just saw, Coach Keith Sanchez, him along with Micah Parsons, who is the truth. They do a Locked On NFL draft podcast that you need to check out. Make sure you look into it and learn as much as you can about all of these prospects. It's Locked On NFL Draft. Make that your second listen each and every day. Thank you for joining us here on Locked On Jaguars. We're within a month, man. Within a month. We got one more show this week. Hang in there. We'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.